any rate, my name is Dave Rucker, and welcome to the Yamhill County Historical Society, our quarterly program we call Secrets of the Past. First off, Carrie Bonney is over here, one of our board members, and thanks to her and Youngberg Hill Vineyards, you'll find wine over there. Enjoy through the meeting. There's some snacks and things over there as well. Thank you, Carrie and Youngberg Hill. Secrets of the Past, like I said, is quarterly. Thus far this year, Corey has told us about the formation of McMinnville and why in the heck there was a bear in our city park.
Yeah.
We learned that. Also, rail development in Yamhill County and the shenanigans that were behind that at the time. So we've had some quality presentations. Tonight's is Tales of the Flying M and Travels on the Trask River Road. Right? That's what you're here for? Yeah. Okay, make sure we're on the right one. Yes, that is going to be our presentation. We'll go through the presentation, enjoy snacks and beverage. Pam Watts, our president, will close it out. There'll probably be question and answer period there as well. A short intro. Many of you may know this story. However, I'm going to read just a paragraph here as a primer for you. Over 125 years ago, weary travelers rested at Traveler's Home, a hotel along the Trask Mountain stagecoach route. This is the place the Mitchell family has called home since 1922. The Flying M Ranch was born in 1970 out of a desire to work with family and make a living off the land. In 1971, the original ranch lodge was completed with a rustic dining room, lounge, and museum. In the early morning hours of January 3, 1983, the original lodge was destroyed by fire. Encouragement, as well as physical and financial help from family and friends, were forthcoming. They made it possible to rebuild a new lodge, which was completed and opened on January 19, 1985. Without them, we wouldn't be here today. This valley was once filled with wheat fields where there is now timber. Stagecoach lines and train tracks were where there are now roads. There were communities such as Byersville, Chesterbrook, and Fairdale, which provided families with a school, post office, dance hall, sawmills, hotel, and bathhouse. The bathhouse was called Fairdale Mineral Springs. The locals claimed that bathing in the mineral water cured everything. The Mitchell families talked many trusting souls into tasting the mineral water. If you're ever offered a drink of this cure-all, we suggest you say no thank you. The large lodge was sold in 2008. The Flying M Ranch now encompasses around 200 acres, 80 of which are atop Trask Mountain, the destination of all overnight horse rides. The Mitchell family and crew operate the horse riding program with overnight lodging available at the Red House Bed and Breakfast, presently 3 camping shacks, and many, many different camping sites. Apparently the Flying M Ranch is open range area where the horses have the right of way. That was the bottom line, a warning of sorts, I suppose. We will thank you all for being here. We're going to start this presentation with our own Corey Knutz and very, very, very special guest, Barbara Mitchell. Come on up, folks.
Oh, I'm supposed to sit down.
Oh, you can stand up. I'm so nervous, I think Barbara's just going to have to pull this one off for me.
Knock it off.
Barbara's going to start with a song, I think.
No way.
No, she's not. This is just way too much fun. And I'll tell you, it's an honor for me to be able to, just to be able to do this presentation and getting to meet Barbara and getting to know her more. And she had me all over the tops of Trask Mountain in my wife's freshly detailed car. We got lost temporarily. We're going over gravel piles. It was like, pretty much doesn't get any better than that. And so just like any presentation, there's so much information to get started on. It's like, gosh, where do you even start? I would just start by saying, obviously you guys are here not just to listen to this big windbag talk a lot, but to hear Barbara and some of their stories. So what we're going to cover is time frame would be from 1870s to, well, all the way up into the 1990s, I guess, or, kind of the duration of the lodge. But some of this stuff predates the time span of the lodge, which was like 73 to 2005 or 6.
71 to 2006.
See, that's why I have a fact checker here. I'm not going to be able to make up as much stuff this time. So, is there a fire marshal in the building? Good. This is back.
There's a couple from the fire department over there.
Oh, man. So, this, that's not supposed to be on there. What do we, oh, good, it's gone. So what you're looking at here, I gotta grab this little pointer here, is a picture of the old stage that used to run a mail route from Yamhill to Tillamook. It was a 50-mile run, and it'd take more than a day, a night, and a couple nights, and hotels dotted along the way to get the mail from Yamhill, which back then was called North Yamhill, to Tillamook. And it was advertised as the roughest, worst ride in the world. You know, it was a pretty primitive trail. In fact, we know that it wasn't a very good trail because when the county came along and made county roads, they didn't even hardly follow it very much. It's a rough ride, and you could pack 2 pack horses for 50 cents to get over the trail. And what it was also a way for passengers to get more than just a mail route. They would also take passengers to get over to the coast side. And so we'll see some more pictures. Of course, the first spot where you started, let's say you came from Portland and you came out on the railroad, which the railroad was through Yamhill by 1879. And then you would jump on a little hack, as they called it, or a carriage, and they'd haul you to let's go to the next picture, the Royal Hotel. This wasn't in existence until about 1902 or 3. Later on, you'll see they had a fire, which is a bummer. It was a pretty substantial building for Yamhill. All wood construction. I was just impressed that you can see the burn marks. The fact that they got that out is impressive. So kudos to the Yamhill Fire Department. Probably a bucket brigade. And so they would go from, it just depends on what time you arrive in town, but you would head west, and this is a 50-mile jaunt to get to the Tillamook. And so along the way, they would trade out horses, get fresh horses. There's different hotels you could stay at that looked nothing like this. Really, the hotels you'll see looked more like, well, there's downtown Yamhill. One more picture anyhow, and you can see the Royal Hotel on the left there. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact placement. I'll bet you there's somebody in this room that knows maybe right where that hotel was. Gary does. Was it?
That store on the right still there.
Okay, so T&E. So it wasn't quite up on the corner of the block. It was south just a little bit. And then, so this was one of the first stops. And Barbara, you recognize that picture?
My husband and sister-in-law were born right behind that window.
That pretty much nails it down. So this was called the Petch House, or also called Traveler's Rest. And the Petch was after the family, the Petch family. And sadly, at some point, and I don't have the date on it, I'm sure the date's somewhere, but she was actually murdered by another competing hotel. It was rough business back then. And the location of this is off of Oak Ridge, and what's the crossroad right there?
Where that is, okay, a lot of you might know where the old lodge was, and you come down the airstrip just a little ways, and it was right in the middle of the airstrip is where that was.
Okay.
And then right where you turned into the lodge on the left was where her competitor was. And where she was shot was you go down Flying M Road towards Fairdale Road, turn right, and about a quarter of a mile there's a little dip where there's a creek, and that's where she got shot.
And so she succumbed to her injuries, but she died later in this home. And that's where Bryce was born.
Eleanor.
Eleanor as
Shooter.
what's that?
What happened to the shooter?
What? See, that's why we have Barbara.
He got arrested, this is what I was told by my in-laws, he got arrested in California and he hung himself in jail.
Real brave guy. And then also we have the Fairdale House and location of that, Barbara. I'm making you work.
It's where the bridge is at Fairdale, where our big barn was. It would be just to the south is where that was.
Okay.
Because I think some of the old pictures of the covered bridge, you can see this house.
There's the covered bridge.
See right there to the right is where the house was. And I was told by Bryce's parents, and I don't know who it was, that somebody, neighbor around there, used to tie his cows in the covered bridge in the wintertime, and that's where he fed them the hay.
Our tax dollars at work.
He's a good cover.
And that was the Mineral Springs up there, already mentioned. 1884, something like that, it was originally built. And the next picture is a picture of the concession stand where you could get food. Anybody want to eat out of that?
Right. Both of those were there when Bryce and I bought the Fairdale property. And that, I don't know if you can see, on the other side, it actually, no, it's
Somewhere over there.
on a big, and it had a door that flipped up, and it actually was like a modern day bartender. Yeah, and they had buildings where people could stay and use the bathhouse. And when I was a kid, this Hutchcroft School that's out here, a bunch of ladies had a club that owned it. And anyway, they would come up here to the Mineral Springs to a picnic. And those buildings were still up when I was a little kid, and people would peek out the window at us when we'd come by. I'm really old.
So that wasn't the 1980s then. So here's an overall map that maybe won't help you a lot if you're far out there. But to give you some context, and I'm in the way of a bunch of people, sorry. Here's a Flying M Ranch. There's Yam Hill. And so here's this 50-mile jaunt that goes all the way over to Tillamook. And so along the way, Yam Hill, that's where the train depot was, and you'd get up to the Flying M Ranch area where the Petch House was. And we're going to see the next picture of the Summit House, which is, I know there's a lot of people here familiar with Trask Mountain, some of you. And the Summit House was located kind of in the saddle of the high point there at about 3,000 feet. And then the trail continued on down to the Trask River and went to Tillamook. I liked this view because it actually includes some of the cedar telephone poles, and didn't your family had something to do with, here we go, some of the telephone poles.
Bryce's father had a contract, his mother and dad, with the telephone company to provide all the telephone poles in their split cedar. And when we were clearing some property up on Trask, Bryce found 2 of the old posts, and we put one of them back up because they're all split cedar. And then we have another one that he saved up there too. And the Summit House is just below where our upper cabin is up on Trask Mountain. And it was still up when Bryce and I got married. That would have been 65 years ago. And there was still a water trough that was chiseled out of a log, which my grandson said it's rotten, but you can still see where it is.
That's cool. And there is a picture of the Summit House. One of the captions said that would it have been Clarence, or who built it? Iva? Okay.
It said his dad did, but I don't think he did.
Yeah.
Who
That's the
knows?
thing about history. You can't ever, you have to kind of back up some of your facts and figure out if it's true or not. This is just a side view of the same Summit House. And if you went further towards Tillamook, this was the Trask River House. It was about 19 miles east of Tillamook. And then again, that would be another place where the horses were tired. Everybody was tired. You needed a place to stay. It's a long, bumpy, terrible, dusty, dirty, rocky, bumpy, miserable ride. And so that's probably not what their brochure said for traveling it. And now we're kind of leading into another segment, and just a brief part about some of the railroad. We're not going to get super deep into all the railroad stuff, but we're looking at Carlton in this picture, and there's the Carlton Lake out west. It's a 500-acre lake used to float mill logs, and as we've talked about mill ponds before, it was a way for the logs to, well, it's easy to move them around, but it also keeps them hydrated so they don't split, and so you could keep your logs a little longer. And it was really a community lake, really. I mean, it was a shallow lake, probably some mosquitoes, right? But they did community competitions with log rolling and different logging activities during the summer. It was really quite admired by the locals. Yes?
So where in Carlton would that have been?
Okay, we'll back it up.
Coming to Carlton, you turn left to go to McMinnville. Like,
So I'll give you some context. I'm so close, I'm like, might as well
I
just
can
point
tell
out.
them that bridge, the bridge.
So, yeah, well, I was gonna say, this is like Carlton Corners right here. And this is the main street where all the restaurants are. And here's still a church there on that location. And it comes down the dip and the park is out this way. Here's the Coast Hills. And either that's Trask, it doesn't quite look bumpy enough.
No, it's
right
off
up
to
there.
the left, it's
So-
on there.
Yeah, didn't make it into the screen. Does that help?
It was out between 47 and West Side Road.
Exactly. In fact, when you go north of Carlton Pack on West Side Road and you look right, that would have all been water within, in some places, 50, 60 feet, you know.
And if you come out West Side, you'll see some houses that look like they had built out over the lake. They were built like they were a boathouse.
And what a bummer. It'd be pretty cool to still have it, but we don't.
When was that drained, you know?
Mid-60s. I know they constructed it right around, 1906.
It went out in the mid-60s.
It blew,
Yeah.
yeah.
The dam developed the cracks. I was a little girl when it happened. I remember going over the cracks and the dam was there.
Yeah, and it even blew out and had a problem in 1922. And then they fixed it up and put it back in. Here, at this picture, we're looking at, it might be Bridge 24.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's some other pictures I wish we would have thrown in here, but it was a very tall trestle. I mean, more than 100 feet tall. And Bridge 24, that means, well, there's at least 23 other bridges before it. And that's not even the beginning of getting that far up into the Trask timber area where they're harvesting timber. At one point, there was 79 miles of track collectively all together with different logging camps. And I also like to point out, check out the water tank. They needed water to keep the steam locomotives up to, full power. They had to burn something to run the pistons in the motor, the engine. And there's a phrase that we use when something tanked. Well, that tanked. And I believe the correlation was to certain cities that were along the railroad that had a water tank. The train would have to stop there, the steam locomotive would have to stop to take on water, which became a great place for passengers to get off and on. And that created commerce, business, merchant, and so, but when we went to diesel locomotives, they took the tanks down, and those diesel locomotives didn't need to stop anymore, and the town tanked. No tank, no stop, keep on going. And Flora logging, this would have been a little bit later, maybe in the 20s or 30s, because there's some other engines that have the Carlton and Coast logo on it, on the tender,
That was Bryce's dad's
and this was Bryce's dad's
photo.
photo.
A lot of them were.
And then there's that. Tall trestles, big falls. I mean, stating the obvious
There were
here.
a lot of train wrecks.
And a lot of train wrecks. This railroad set kind of out in the woods, just rusting for quite a while after it closed. And the War Department heard about it. And so this would have been about 1942-ish, right in there, and I'm a little foggy on that. But Zimmerman, Gordon, I remember him telling me he was out in a field out by Pike, bucking hay, and he wished he would have had a camera because the War Department had got wind of all this iron up in the woods, steam donkeys, cables, track, all this stuff. So they were going to go up there and retrieve it, and they did. They built some very primitive trestles because the Tillamook burn wiped out a lot of the trestles, which basically made the whole train system a moot point. It was too expensive to start over, and so they didn't. And but here is Gordon Zimmerman out there, 15 years old, and here comes this relic of a train pulling steam donkeys, old iron, and it looked like something out of a movie. Just they were even shocked and surprised that it could even go. Because some of them went through the fire and burned all the paint off. And this is one of your typical sawmills that would have been located out in the woods. If you had a way to get all the lumber out, typically it would have been rail or truck later as trucks got better. It was easier to do your processing of your lumber up on the mountain instead of hauling entire logs all the way down to the valley because of obvious reasons. It's hard to move a log. It's easier to move smaller lumber. And so they would do all the cutting up on the mountain and leave all the bark and all the cut off up there and bring down what they really needed. And with sawmills so remotely located, created logging camps. In fact, and some of the logging camps actually had some of the most furnished schools for the kids. There's a survey in there, it was about 1920-ish something. There's a book that we have over there about the schools of Yamhill County. And some of those logging schools were the nicest furnished because, they were making money and they wanted to accommodate their families. And some of the camps up there, people, if you look on a map, you might see Camp Murphy. And today it's just a gravel intersection with a lot of different roads running different ways, and that's just behind Barbara's family's cabins that are up there on top of Trask Mountain. And
In case you're interested,
I'm doing a lot of talking.
Camp Murphy's telephone number was Portland Toll Station number 3. The Trask Lookout, Eleanor, that she was on for 13 years was Portland Toll Station number 2, and Bryce's parents' phone number was number 1. And when we first got married, we did not have a telephone, and Bryce's dad and him fixed a crank phone between their house and our house, and when my mom called, they'd ring 3 cranks and I'd run down to their house to talk to her. And my kids still can't believe it.
Now we have an actual picture of a splash dam. Some of the previous things we've talked at some of our meetings, we talked about splash dams, and this was another strategy to get logs from one point to another without having to put them on a truck or a train. And splash dams caused a lot of strife between ranchers and loggers. And so the idea was you'd build a big dam like we're looking at here.
Can I tell them where it is?
Oh, sure. And this one here, Barbara's going to tell you about.
Oh, this one is down by my daughter's wedding site, which is Riverside Wedding Venue, and it's just kind of below our pond. So it's called the Petch Creek one, and there was one back up the river from the lodge, and they would put the logs behind and then break it loose to the next dam and on down. But this one here, if you go down along the river, you can still see some of the remains of that.
So as you can imagine, you let the dam gate open, and then all these logs just rush down the river like a gigantic toilet flush. And you're a rancher, and you got some cattle in the field, and you did have some fences. The logs would sometimes get out into above the floodplain and wipe out entire fences, and cattle are going all over the place. And there was lawsuits and stuff that went clear to the court, and then eventually they made them illegal. So I love this picture. And again, the Petch House. Barbara, you have anything to add about that? Other than it's a darn good picture. And who took the
Well,
picture?
Bryce's dad took most of these pictures.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like there might be some snow in the mountains. Hard to tell on black and white, isn't it? And here's Frank Wortman. If you know anything about some of McMinnville's history, the Wortmans are a pretty big deal because the Wortmans brought the bank to McMinnville in 1883, and their, well, it would be grandson would be Ralph and Frank. They were the Rascally brothers. They were the first to get a car and drive it to the beach and make history. And it was a 2-week miserable drive for them, but that's a whole other story. And so the Wortman Bank, it wasn't called the Wortman Bank, it was First National Bank in McMinnville. And it's where Key Bank is today, across from the U.S. Bank Plaza. They rebuilt it, and
that's Dorothy Gunnis.
yes, and that's Dorothy Gunnis, daughter. And so, gosh, we're trying to figure out the dates of this.
Okay. Gunnis and Peterson, if there's anybody as old as me, they would remember that. And she was married to the Gunnis boy that had that. Yeah, because Bryce's dad and Frank were really good friends. And one of the cabins there on the ranch is called the Wortman Cabin because he came out there all the time.
Pretty close ties. And one more, there's Frank doing some fishing. So just proof, the Wortmans and the Mitchells were good friends. And here's Bryce cleaning his gun. And here we have Bryce and Eleanor, obviously, standing on a stump, and they are looking at across, I think it was
Tillamook Burn.
Yeah, somewhere up there by the Gap, Windy Gap. And so the Tillamook Burn was something that happened in the dirty 30s. It happened in 1933, 1936, and 1939. This photo would have been 1939 because it puts the kids at the right age as well. And the 1939 fire was finally the fire that got really into Yamhill County and really changed the landscape up there. In fact, as Barbara and I were up there driving through all the logging roads, and my wife, they're logging all of it right now, pretty much all at one time. That's because when a fire comes through and wipes everything out, it kind of resets harvest dates to pretty much all at the same time. So there's a great view up there, and that really impacted Eleanor to the point where she was also a fire lookout. And this is just
I can
kind of
tell that.
yeah. And here's Barbara.
This is in the first lodge, and it was Bryce's parents'
Do you want to point?
57th wedding anniversary. I can't point.
Okay, just point up there. Just walk up there.
Okay. I'm not into modern stuff, but Bryce's mom and dad, and then there's Frank Wortman and his second wife, Mabel, and there's Bryce and me. And, okay, what did we decide? Chagwins?
Yes.
Were they the ones that donated back up there?
Mhm.
There's Percy Chagwin and his daughter Agnes. And this is Mr. and Mrs. Buxton. He was the fire chief then, and that was their son. So, and there's Brenda, and there's Beth.
Good capture.
Yeah, a lot of these pictures, like Bridge 24 and the train wrecks were all pictures that Bryce's dad took. He had his own dark room in the early days.
Don't sit down. This is the next photo, something you can do.
Oh, see that school bus? Can you tell it's orange?
It's
That's-
definitely orange.
That's up at the top of Oak Ridge, and that pickup was Bryce's parents, and they had the contract to haul the kids up there to meet the bus. So, a lot of difference nowadays, and I think some of the kids, did you ride in the pickup?
Well, it was like a suburban.
Oh, that was modern. Then we had a, yeah, we
like
had
an
a-
Escalade or something.
Yeah, we had a blue van, and in the days, let's see, I hope they're not here. Eleanor drove it part-time, and I drove it part-time. And the two Novak boys caused so much trouble on the bus. And I don't know if you know the red house up on Oak Ridge that belonged to Tureks, okay? We got right up there, and there was this big, huge mud puddle, and the boys were just causing all kind of trouble, and so I stopped, and I said, "Do you kids see that mud puddle?" If you don't knock it off, I'm gonna bang your heads together and shove your faces in that mud puddle. And do you know what would happen nowadays if you said that? But I didn't have any trouble with him after that.
Barbara's so sweet. Oh, there they are. 1957.
Oh, and what do you call the building where that was brand new and there had never been anything held in it, and it was at the school, but I forget what they called it.
Uh-oh.
Now they tore it down and there's a big fire, or the big dome there. So,
In
anyway.
Yamhill?
Yeah,
In Yamhill.
yeah.
There she is, Miss Hollywood. She's a natural star. She was born in North Hollywood, so this explains a lot.
What river is that, Grandma?
What river is that?
North Yamhill.
North Yamhill. Is that one of the bridges on your property?
That was the first footbridge that
Okay.
Bryce built.
Okay.
To the left of the lodge? The one going to the left, to the motel?
It was over on the right-hand side.
And I think you could talk a little bit about this. Eleanor and her lookout days.
Yeah. Eleanor was lookout for 13 years, and her tower, it wasn't a live-in tower. There was a cabin down below. And one of my exciting trips was we got a call, and she'd fallen. There's the lookout. See how tall it was? And she lived in that little cabin there, and she was up cleaning the chimney, and she fell off the roof. So, yeah, that wasn't good. I was also on, because I really admired Eleanor, and I was also on a fire lookout, which was north of the Wilson River Highway. It was called Round Top, but it was a live-in tower, so I lived in the tower. Yeah.
And she'd pack her water up.
You guys probably don't know what those backpacks are that the water's in, and when you're fighting fire, you squirt the water like that. In those days, all kids didn't have cars. I didn't have a car. So I had to hike down the road about a mile to a spring and fill that backpack up and come back, and that's what I drank.
What about any guys flirting with her in the tower?
Knock it off. Well, I will tell the truth. The forestry crew came.
She could tell the truth now.
And they cleared the brush around because the trees weren't cut down, the snags and stuff from the fire, and they would come up there and work. And the young crew members went and shoved me out up on the roof, and I got so scared I climbed up and took a hold of the antenna, and then they had to get up there and get me down. Yeah, they did all kinds of things to me. When they had an outhouse, I'll tell this story, and it was made out of wood, there was cracks in it, and of course, you didn't want to go down there with all those guys there, and finally I couldn't stand it, so I went down there, and they started the fire pumper up and practically knocked the outhouse over with squirting water all over it. Okay.
That'd be
I'm
quite
done.
the flush.
Yes.
And this tower was built in '39. This is the Trask Mountain Tower. I think it went down, they took it down in what, 59 or 60? Was it a lot later?
It was later than that.
Okay.
When I was dating my husband, I climbed that.
Let's get a good date. Somebody give me a good date. 86, 87. Okay.
Yeah, I climbed it 76, 77.
Then I think what happened is I read they may have replaced the tower at some certain point. And then the second tower was taken down that year because this photo of this particular tower says it was taken down, but that doesn't mean they didn't put another one up. Yes, we got a hand back here.
Did you communicate by radio?
Yes,
I was gonna say, or Morse code?
Yes.
homing pigeons.
In the olden days, before there were cell phones, and radio communication is what we did, and my tower was like the repeater. They didn't even have repeaters then. So if the Tillamook wanted to talk to Forest Grove, they called me and I had to repeat everything. And then also the lookout towers reported every airplane, what kind it was, which direction it was going, and stuff like that. And then when you had a lightning storm, you put a thing over your firefinder azimuth and then taped it down, and you made a line about what time the strikes were, the lightning strikes. Yeah. So the second or third night that I was up there by myself, the tower was the center of a lightning storm. And I don't know if any of you know where South Fork Camp is, where the prisoners' camp is, which is still there. Pretty soon I heard, and I was just so nervous doing all this stuff, and I heard this coming up the hill, and the guy that was the boss of the South Fork Camp came up the stairs, and he said, I heard you were really young, and this was your first lightning storm. Are you okay? And I said, yeah, and he left.
Some serious compassion there. You had to be tough, right? In fact, didn't you raise some homing pigeons that you sold like 30 different times and they kept coming back? No, that's not true. Here we have a familiar sight for some of you. This is the first lodge. And I know Barbara can say something about this.
Well, I don't know if any of you know the Horlicks,
Yep.
but this is Dick Horlick, and this is Rocky, and this is Bryce and me, Bryce's mom, my grandma, and my kids, and my dad. I can't even see who the other people are, but anyway, yeah.
What about the dog? The name of the dog?
Yeah.
Just the horse.
Just dog. And so, I guess take note, there's the next photo. Well, that ain't gonna do us any good. So, the fireplace, what, is this thing working? Yes, it is. So, they reused the same fireplace chimney for the rebuild after it burnt. There's the back of that same lodge.
The first lodge, yeah.
Yep, the first lodge. And so you're looking at
The river.
the river runs through it.
Okay, I gotta show him something.
Okay.
Okay, see this line right here? And that over there is the bar. Bryce fixed this to shock people, and there was an airplane that crashed that he saved, and him and my son-in-law Will fixed it, and they put the plane on this, and then they raised and lowered it on the other end of the lodge so the plane would like fly past the window and people would fly. Yeah, that's what this line, I didn't even realize.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's the real reason they took the picture. Would have never known that. How about that? Barbara was a truck driver too.
Oh, the cook shack.
Oh, the cook shack. We don't have the cook shack in there.
Okay.
But that's not a subject.
This one would haul 22 head of horses in that, really packed in. And this was our cook shack, and C.F. Laughlin loaned us his truck to pull our cook shack with. So that must have been on our way to one of the beach rides. That's my granddaughter's desk, right there.
And I like your outfit, Grandma, all in red over there.
Oh yeah. And there's the stables. They're still there today. And why don't you tell us kind of what the typical ride would be? Like, let's say if you went just to the summit or to the beach.
Well, my granddaughter Jessica, that's right there, she has the horses now. And going to the beach, the first night we'd stay up at our upper place. The second day we would stay on the Trask River. And the third, we'd stay back of the beach on some property owned by Tufels along a creek, and Bryce built a shed because they wouldn't let us camp right at the beach with all the horses. So it would be 1, 2, 3 days, and we'd ride on the beach too.
Okay.
And then we hauled everybody and the horses back.
So how many miles of a ride from the stable to the summit house?
I don't know,
Oh, you know,
maybe 12 or 13 miles.
it's not that.
But it's not that far for somebody that is used to riding, but people that aren't used to riding, we went really slow. We stopped for lunch and take a lot of breaks and things like that. Yeah, yeah.
I think you're just gonna keep that. And there's the cabin. How much did this property cost?
80 acres up on Trask. Bryce's father bought on the courthouse steps for $12.50. And then somebody offered him all the property between their place, where our place is now, and the upper cabin for 10 cents an acre. And he goes, why would I want that, all that chunky land for 10 cents an acre? Yeah.
Well, I actually took this picture because Barbara and I made it up to the cabin and all the other little cabins that surround it. And nothing short of, I was just impressed with the craftsmanship and the skills, Bryce and the whole family. It was really something to be proud of. And I was just felt like it was an honor to get to go along on the trail and see all this stuff. And there's the bunkhouse that's also located just adjacent to the first picture. And inside view, there's the bunks.
Those are
Anything
really
to add to
comfy
that?
too.
It's just a bunkhouse.
Yeah.
That's when we're old.
Oh, she says that's when we're old. I didn't say that. She said that. And so here's the second lodge. And you guys built your home on the hill just across the airstrip at the same time. And I know she has way better information than I do, so here you go.
That's before we added on, but,
To the far right.
yeah. But when we were rebuilding it, the money that we were paying, it was in the deal that we had to pay them whether we worked or, whether they worked or not. So where the tennis court is now, we got our GI loan for our house, and when they couldn't work on the lodge, they would work on our house, which was over on the tennis court, and it was like Lincoln Logs and numbered and stuff. And so then after it got done, we tore it down and hauled the logs up on the hill and put it back together again.
And what style did you say that was called? Wasn't there a certain?
Oh, you're thinking about the panabode cabins
Oh, okay.
that we had that you could buy. In fact, the Sewards have one,
Okay.
just like it in those days.
Oh,
And so does Kay.
Thanks to Barbara and Bryce.
Yeah. I think you just hold on to that.
Oh.
You got it from here, I think. There's only 2 more hours left, so if anybody wants the heat turned up.
And you can see the
As a kid, this was one of my favorite things, was just going up there and watching the planes come in and out and eating some good food. I do that a lot.
We'd have 20 or 30 planes sometimes that would come in for breakfast.
So how about the story about the first Mother's Day? It was a crazy weekend.
I don't know if you saw the award that my sister-in-law got, but the first Mother's Day that we were open, Bryce and I, we didn't realize that people took their mothers out for dinner. So Bryce and I were over at the lodge real early in the morning, just the two of us, and we saw this fire rig coming up the road, and I don't know if any of you know Jerry Smith. Okay, he came up to tell us about my sister-in-law getting shot, because she was a dispatcher for the county. And the new police chief, I believe it was, had come up a few weeks before this happened, and he told them all, you shouldn't have your dispatcher in where the doors are just open to the public. Well, this gal had come in, and Eleanor got up, it was in the morning, and she said, can I help you? And the gal goes, I've been wanting to do this my whole life. Boom, and she shot her right above her heart. She fell down. The gal climbed up on the counter and started shooting at her and shot her through the buttocks. And then she hollered on the radio, which some number that means silence. Probably some of you guys know that, I don't. So anywhere, if you know where Triangle Motors used to be, that's where they caught her, and that's where she threw her gun, her pistol, under the car. but Eleanor got over it all right. But anyway, Jerry was coming up to tell us about it. And so they wanted us to go in to the jail and peek through the hole and see if we knew the gal, because maybe we did something that caused her to do that, and didn't. So then when we finally came home, we couldn't figure out, the whole airstrip was full of cars. And I said to Bryce, I wonder what happened. I wonder if they heard about Eleanor and they came to find out. Well, we ran out of food, we ran out of everything because everybody bought their mothers for Mother's Day, and I said, I think we'll quit. But we didn't.
Sometimes her answer was, you know, why were you doing the restaurant? Because we're crazy enough. Let's see here. And there's the whole, well, not the whole family, but
No,
some
that's
of them.
his grandkids.
Yeah.
And my husband,
And probably what, 10 years ago or not quite?
10 years ago.
Okay. We are at the point now where we can take questions. Are you ready?
Yeah,
Ready as she's ever going to be.
yeah.
Yeah, Bo Mitchell.
What'd she say?
Here you go.
Yeah, Bo Mitchell.
No, Chatty Cathy. Yeah?
Sorry, I got another question. So, your last name is Mitchell, but your husband was born in the Petch house. So why was it called the Petch house?
Because the Petches owned it, Mr. and Mrs. Petch, and there's a Petch Creek and everything. Then Bryce's parents, when Petch House burned, partly, they moved down the road, if you're familiar with the Flying M, right about midway in the airstrip, there was CCC camp. It was called the Civilian Conservation Corps. Okay, so that wasn't there anymore, so they moved. There was 4 of them. The first one was Bryce's dad's shop and garage. The second one, the parents and Eleanor lived in. Bryce lived in the third one, and the fourth one was the junk room. And our red house, the main part of it, I didn't put it on the historical thing because they're really picky about stuff, what you can do, but that was one of the CCC cabins. And then, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of conscientious objectors during the war. If you go down from Fairdale and go up the old logging road now, just across the Fairchilds Creek Bridge was the Conchi camp. And those buildings were still there when Bryce and I got married, on the left. Do you remember them? Yeah.
The one next to the bank.
Yeah.
Barbara, is it still possible to go from the M to the beach?
The Warehouser keeps the gates locked, except for on hunting season, they open them. We have a right-of-way, a personal right-of-way on the trail and the road that they can't cut us out of, but we have a right-of-way, a commercial right-of-way, but they could stop that if they wanted to.
Okay, so if you set up a horseback ride for that trip again, I want to sign up.
Okay, tell my granddaughter, they wanted me to cook on the dinner rides and overnight rides, and I said I'm done cooking.
Oh, good job.
That's my granddaughter and my great-granddaughter. Your grandson, his name is, listen to this, his name is Justin Wyatt, and there's Bentley, another great-grandkid, and Holly, another great-grandkid, and Hazel, another great-grandkid, and Bennett and Miles. Great-grandkids.
Gary?
Eleanor gets shot. I understand it was an airplane that unintentionally, parked her lead-to garage or something?
An airplane that what? Hit the
Eleanor's garage unintentionally?
Eleanor's garage. Did an airplane hit Aunt Eleanor's garage?
The guy that bailed out, he went on top of, well, it was a barn, an airplane hangar, and he had an automatic parachute that came out. But there was a plane crash right in front of the stables, and Bryce was mowing grass, and it just missed him when it crashed.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes?
Robert, can you mention some of the celebrities that visited YNM?
Celebrities.
Ernest Borgnine.
Because there was the
And-
fire movie filmed
Yeah,
up there.
and Fred McMurray. Who?
Sky King.
Oh, yeah, Sky King, because she, yeah. Sky King. There were a lot of other ones that I can't remember who they all were.
Helen Hunt, yeah.
Helen
The movie.
Hunt.
Grandma, Nancy had a question.
What?
There was the lady that played the piano.
Oh,
Oh,
Wells?
yeah.
Or
The really famous piano
is her
player.
last name Wells? I don't remember. She played Dixieland and
Joanne something?
right here, Barbara. Here's the question.
Two things. One thing, tell them about when you made the movie up there.
Well, there's been several movies, the Fire movie, Quarterback Princess, and stuff, yeah.
The other thing, I had a friend that was an old person, and she said, about the stage road, she says, my mother always said, if you wanted to get away from your husband or leave your creditors, take the stage to Tillamook and nobody would bother to come after you.
That would be true. It wasn't a leisure trip.
No, years ago, let's see, and Janice Knudts was on it, and my daughter Brenda, she was a little bitty thing. We took a letter from the postmaster in Yamhill. We rode as close as we could
Trail riders.
on our horses,
Yamhill Trail riders.
and went over to the postmaster in Tillamook with the letter and then brought it back.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
59.
Was it 59?
Billy Sharp. I got the letter from the mayor in Yamhill, and we rode over to Tillamook, and I think we got pictures of that.
Yeah.
I saw him.
Yeah,
It's real.
Yeah.
Fact checker.
yeah.
Let's talk about the Mule Skinners weekends and the poker rides.
That was always on Memorial Day, but they haven't had the Mule Skinners Poker Ride up there since COVID. Joanne Castle.
Eric Estrada.
Oh yeah, Eric Estrada, oh my gosh.
Boy,
No, he got in really bad trouble. I won't even tell you
did Bryce throw
why.
him out?
But what Bryce told him would happen to him if he didn't leave the girls alone. Yeah,
Girls.
yeah.
And the girls liked him.
Just as coach.
Good looking. Look at all the girls up there.
No, that was before their time.
Just a
Yeah,
little-
Mary Lou waitress up there at the lodge.
I think the second or third weekend after Mother's Day, I got to wash the dishes. Until, yeah, that was a fun time. Yeah. Yeah.
My husband worked when you built the bar on.
The
and-
first one or second one?
Second one. And it's built kind of almost over the creek. You saw how it jutted out in that one picture. And it was going into October, November. It was getting icy and he was shut out of the woods. He was a logger and he had his cork boots on. And Marilyn was, they were working on the roof. And they had planks laid out on the ridge and he had his cork boots on and was walking the ridge delivering them supplies. Because they would kind of stake themselves out. Well, Marilyn started to slip toward the creek. And my husband grabbed her and kept her from sliding off the roof.
Are you talking about Marilyn Kreisman?
Yes, my husband's Marvin King. Yeah, and I will never forget that. He helped strip some of the logs for it too.
Barbara, what about the time you left for dead in Alaska, moose hunting? You don't remember?
I was left.
Airplane left you for dead? Maybe she was making that up one day. I was talking to some of your family, said, ask her about the time that you were moose hunting and they took the moose and left you on a river.
Yeah, Bryce and I, it was a big deal to go up to Alaska moose hunting, and I went out and with the pilot, the guide, and we hiked and hiked and hiked, and I shot a great big bull moose. So it took us forever to get it butchered and packed back to the airplane, and he said, because he was going to tie the meat on the sides of the wings and stuff, and he said, it's going to be too heavy with you in it. I'm going to have to fly you over, and I'll leave you a tent and a sleeping bag and your gun, but don't tell anybody or I'll lose my guy's license, and I'll fly back and get all the stuff and then come back over here where there's more room to take off. So I got left alone up there, but this hasn't got anything to do with that. I shouldn't be such a blabbermouth, should I?
What about the chickens that Ron Davison bought you?
Do you know Mr. Reber that had Reber's welding shop and Ron Davison? One year Bryce and I were on a pack trip because we hired to take people out hunting, and they have the 4-H auction for stuff. And Ron and my daughter's father-in-law paid $150 for 6 chickens in our name. So then when we got ready to take another pack trip, I took the chickens down to Ron Davidson's office with feed, and he wasn't there, and I put him in the office and wrote a note that they better be alive when I got back, or he owed me $150, and they pooped all over his desk.
Don't mess with Barbara. I think we're at a point where we could wrap up. You could still corner Barbara up here afterwards, but these are also for sale. They make a great fan.
And it's mine.
Hey, well, is it? It is. Yeah.
Oh, that's yours.
See, she's trying to take my stuff. But this is about the old Stagecoach road that we've been talking about. And there's a lot of good information. If you're kind of nerdy like me, it might be fascinating, something to read. Yes. And we have one more question. And then one more thing after that. One more thing in you. Sorry.
Well, this really isn't a question, but I've known the Mitchell family. My folks went to school with Barbara and Bryce Mitchell. My folks are Wayne and Edna Stonebury. And for those of us who have loved you all of our lives, I'm not going to have you sing your song. But we did do a little something to show you how much we love you, and we hope you enjoy it.
I want to hear the song.
Stand up, Barbara.
This is for you. You've been loving everybody else and helping everybody else. I have very fond memories, we all do, of finding him. I put my heart into this, knowing it was going to you.
Thank you. Oh!
All right.
Oh, look at you guys! Oh, thank you.
Model it to the crowd. It says cheap rent on the roof up there.
By the way, she waitressed at the Five back in the day. So did I. We all did. We all did.
And one final thing, people often ask, what is going on with the lodge today? Yeah. And we have a fellow here that could answer that question, and it's Scott, right here in the back. Scott, give us a minute summary.
My name's Scott.
And talk a lot.
This is my wife Christy, and in November of '06, we acquired the lodge and the motel, and we're a ministry now. What we do is we restore faith, hope, and love to the fatherless and the floundering through Jesus. So what we do is we rescue single moms with kids, and we bring in adults that they're not drowning, but they're floundering. And they live there for 1 to 3 years, get back up on their feet. We work with the jails a lot in the city and the county and so forth. So that's what that is.
It's an awesome ministry.
It's a really great program that they've got going on over there. We participated with them.
Okay, is this on?
I think so. I don't know.
Okay, hey, hello. Thank you, Barbara and Corey, for all that you've done. I'd just like to say, could we have the family, the Mitchell family, stand up, please? We want you guys to stand and recognize you for all that you've done in this community. Come on, guys. There's a good contingent here. Yeah. Barbara, come out here. Now I'd like to have those employees from the Flying M stand up from all those years. I think there are some here tonight. Yeah. Those who have gone to the Flying M for class reunions, Christmas parties, weddings, what else have we been there for? Please. Trail rides, picnics. I think the majority of us have some great memory of the Flying M. And I'd just like for all of us to stand up and thank Barbara and her family for providing this. Oh, that's great. I think, thank you. You guys can sit down for just a minute. We are delighted that so many people came out tonight. And we knew it would be a big crowd. And so we appreciate your willingness to cuddle up, in this time of COVID. And as we kept adding chairs and more chairs, that is just wonderful to see the response that we've gotten for this program and for Barbara and what they've done in this community. So we're really pleased with that. Our next program will be Tuesday, October 18th. We don't have the topic and speaker finalized yet, but please, we hope you'll come back. And we have some contact cards on the table. If you'd like to leave your name and contact information, we'll be sure and get that information to you, or you can watch, for our social media and let it know. I don't know, we might not be able to surpass this type of crowd. But we'll let you know as soon as we do. As you can see, I just wanted to say a couple things about the Historical Society. I'm the president this year, and we have a lot of good things going, and it's very active, and we have a lot of things planned for programs and events and education in the future. And thank everybody who are already members of this organization, and would like to extend an invitation to those that aren't to please become members. The price is very reasonable, and you even get free admission into Harvest Fest, which will be our next event coming up on August 20th and 21st. But we're operated primarily by volunteers and donations. We don't receive any money from the county or the state government, so it's really just all based on support of the people that believe in us and the mission to share and preserve the heritage of Yamhill County. So we're pretty excited that it's pretty vibrant, and always looking for volunteers. So, I hate to pass up an opportunity with a group this size to say, hey, you're welcome to volunteer for a 2-hour shift at Harvest Fest, root beer floats, food booth, tickets, whatever, or to come out on a more regular basis and help us. We're always appreciative of that. And just to give you a little update, the Historical Society, after years of having our location over at Lafayette, there was a log cabin there and the polling church, an antique church, And about 15 years ago, this property was donated, and a substantial monetary donation to begin this facility. And it's only taken us 10 or 12 years to consolidate everything. But we were able to accomplish that this year. And we've just recently sold both properties over in Lafayette. So that's an exciting thing to have everything right here. And right there behind the display case over there on that wall, we're going to be opening up the wall, and that will be the Ruth Stoller Research Library. So right now it's back in this meeting room sharing space, but there's some great stuff back there of family history and location, you know, places, history and people, and old yearbooks and obituaries and all sorts of research information. And you're welcome to come look at it now when we're open on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, or we hope to have the new facility open hopefully the first of the year. But lots of good things. Absolutely. So anyway, we'll lots of good things going. Oh yeah, Shirley?
Unless I'm mistaken, the log building that sits was our museum in Lafayette. That was cut out on the drawing.
Oh.
And Branson, I went out and saw it when it was.
Oh, Shirley Venhouse, who had been the president of the Historical Society for many years, said that the log cabin that we had over in Lafayette, which was built in, I think, 1994, was cut from logs out on the Flying M.
Put together. Oh.
Yeah, and put together and everything. So that was pretty exciting. You know, lots of history. Lots of history, and we're trying to, you know, keep that history and share it with others. So we appreciate all of your support. We hope you'll come back, and I'll let Barbara talk. Yeah.
A lot of folks don't know it, but I took Corey and his wife, Maddie, and showed them where you can actually see, like when you come out of Yamhill, about 3.5 miles up from Yamhill on Oak Ridge, you can actually see from the road the ditch where the stage road used to go. And I don't know if people know where I was raised on Oak Ridge. It's 4 miles west of Yamhill. And our neighbor man, Mr. Ed Beller, took us kids when we were little about 1/4 mile below our house where the stage holdup was, and I showed Corey where it was so somebody else would know. And then just up the hill about 1/2 mile, it's before the pavement ends, is still the big old barn that they used to put the stage horses in case one of them got hurt or something. And whoever's owned that property, from the Walkers to the folks that have it now, have taken really good care of the barn. It looks really good. And that Hutchcroft School out there used to be an old ladies club that, yeah, and then the Whitlows donated it here. Yeah.
This is a pretty amazing place because for years the Historical Society, you know, we've just run mainly on donations and support of people. But when an opportunity arises, people come together. And that was the way with the Hutchcroft School. The Whitlows were willing to donate it, and before you knew it, we had a couple of volunteers who had connected with school teachers and other educators in the county, raised enough money to have it moved professionally from rural Yamhill down to here, and we now have plans to build more of the village out here. And one of the gentlemen who is his ancestor was John Gordon Baker, who was, I believe, the first sheriff in McMinnville in the 1850s. He had been in touch with us, and he recently passed and left us a substantial amount of money, which we're going to be able to start an endowment for this organization for the future, so that's very exciting. And we'll also be able to build the house that John Gordon Baker had in the 1850s. Well, a replica of the house that John Gordon Baker had. And we'll be able to get things out of our storage and put those artifacts into the correct type of building. So we're pretty excited about all the good things that are going. And I wanted to mention, we have the 1901 locomobile that you guys mentioned that Frank Wortman had, and it's actually in this building. We've just had it in Heritage Hall here and moved it out earlier today. But we have that on loan. So it's pretty exciting to have that 1901 Locomobile steam engine, first vehicle in Yamhill County here. So a lot of good things. You guys are welcome to take a look in the museum if you'd like, or please come back Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, 10 to 4. Harvest Fest is coming up. We'd love to have you come out and be a guest, or we'd love to have you come out and be a volunteer. So thank you very much.